I've got a slightly different angle I'm coming at from that for that question, and that's around interoperability, right? So in order for there to be a true metaverse, there has to be interoperability between the various different worlds. There has to be a seamlessness about it, and that comes into the IP and licensing, and also ties back into the decentralization discussion. And it's going to be a really interesting one to watch, because Web 2 has been all about, well, there's like we've been saying, there's positives and negatives. There was huge opportunity with Web 2 because there were new jobs created. It gave a voice to the voiceless, but it also laid the foundations for quite dangerous monopolism. It laid foundations for misinformation campaigns that have destabilized democracy. So there's always like pros and cons, and it's the same with Web 3. And I think when it comes to Web 3 and Metaverse and these discussions, there are now very good, important discussions going on with regards to standards and interoperability, and that's going to be really important to watch as we continue to see this going forward.
So then the interesting question, maybe Brent or yourself or Mick will take it, is if the standards aren't as yet finalized, right? That's what I'm hearing, is this talk on standards. It's not finalized yet, but you've got companies that are moving early to start building early worlds. Is there a danger that they may start building something which maybe at some point doesn't align to standards that are agreed upon later? Is that a danger for early adopters and first movers in this space?
Yeah, if I could take that one, I think it needs to evolve, and I think Joe sort of mentioned that we need to see how this is going to develop and how IP is sort of interpreted or licensed within the metaverse. Simple example: if I want an avatar, I want to be the Hulk from the Avengers. Is that an IP infringement? Is that license infringement? And I think we're kind of splitting hairs there in terms of what should be made available to people, but on the flip side of the coin is there's an opportunity for the likes of Marvel, etc. And I think before we look at the issues, I think we're going to have to first get the opportunities in there and understand what IP and how IP and licensing stuff is going to live in the metaverse. And I think all it's presenting now for brands is another way, the same as someone has a Funko now of the Hulk. You're going to have an avatar that you could choose in the metaverse as well. So it's basically just an additional extension of what companies can license. And what sort of IP they can own within the metaverse as well. But if we're talking about what issues to overcome, I think it's going to be very similar to the issues we would need to overcome, that we are trying to overcome all the time with licensing and IP infringement. I think it's kind of par for the course, unfortunately. But there's going to be a lot of exciting times on what can be licensed and what sort of IP ownership can be put through. And if we're looking at entire sort of meta worlds based around one brand, using Marvel, for example, a place that you could visit and be your favorite Marvel character and visit some of the amazing places in the Marvel universe, that's a huge opportunity. And I think to overcome it is, it's the basic sticks and stones of law, of legal systems, legal structures that will look after that stuff, I think.
Cool. So I mean, you could look then at a meta world as each company's or each brand's opportunity to have their own theme park, effectively. We've seen in the physical world, it's only certain types of businesses that naturally align themselves to that type of experience. But, obviously, given that the meta world transcends physical limitations, it seems that you can now actually, each brand can create their own theme park, effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. About websites, for example. When you go to a certain website, you may not know that it's been built on WordPress unless you really dig into it. Just by looking at it, it looks like that person's brand. It feels like that person's brand. It's got all of their content on it. But it was enabled. It was only made possible through WordPress, and it will be the same, I believe, with the metaverse that we're building. There'll be whole worlds and spaces and experiences that feel like that person's brand, that company's brand or that organization, but it's been enabled, it's been empowered by companies underneath that.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you touched on a great point is at some point there's going to be jobs and studios that are creating these experiences. As you are a web designer or someone who creates websites, or someone who's going to be creating these experiences or worlds for your customers and clients. And obviously, we're going to be creating tools as well that people can use, and tools that are available to the metaverse that can be sort of re-implemented in other places. And there's a whole nother IP and ownership question and licensing question on some of the software, or the sort of XR interfaces that are going to be created, and the XR tools that can be created that are going to make lives easier, like a PayPal, for example. Maybe not the best example, but something of that sort of nature that is going to make your life easier within the metaverse. Ways to pay for things, ways to interact with people, those types of things.
100%. I think just going back to Joe's point, I think the way she sort of explained it in terms of how each company's meta world is like their website, I think it's a very good example, because I think like you'll have brands like Lego and Marvel who will create somewhat of a theme park for their experience when you go into their world. But then you'll have sort of on the B2B side, you're not going to have a company like Ibrahim. Is this like a local audience, right? Business of gaming, or is this?
Look, it's primarily local, but I think it's virtual, so
okay.
You could have anyone listening. So I think if you want to give a local perspective, it's fine. You want to give an international perspective, or whatever you're comfortable chatting about.
Okay, so then like a builder's warehouse, in the case of like a local example, I mean, to go into like a builder's warehouse world is not going to be the most fun thing. Actually, maybe, because it's like building and stuff. But I guess what I'm saying is, in the B2B side, and sort of the it's going to be a bit more of like a showroom type style, as opposed to like theme parks. But once again, it's just like an immersive version of their website with their core intention in mind. If it's sort of immersion and brand engagement and awareness and brand positivity, then 100% you'll have a theme park for like Lego. If it's more just sort of selling these high-end consumer or business to business products, then it's going to be a showroom. So obviously, whatever their website objective is, it's almost like just converting that into their meta world essentially, and just making it more immersive.